In this session, we're going to take a closer look at the EventSentry file monitoring or file integrity monitoring functionality. We're going to create a package, create some test alerts, and see how we can forward these alerts to a notification. In our case, we're just going to use the desktop action. So there's a different video where we already cover file monitoring in general. So if we go in the management console to system health, this is where we would set up a new package for file monitoring. So I'm going to click add here, and I'm going to just call it file monitoring test. I'm going to assign this to the local server, which is our EventSentry machine, and I'm going to add a file monitoring object. So now in here there's nothing configured other than some defaults, no folder, etc. So we're going to go to the C drive here. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it file monitoring test. And I'm going to move a file in there. I'm going to move this zip file here. I'm going to move it into this folder just to have something to start off with. Back in the management console, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to specify the folder that we want to actually monitor. Since it's a local machine, I can browse for that folder. If it's a network machine, then you would just specify the path manually. We're going to include subdirectories, even though there aren't any, doesn't hurt. And we're going to leave the default here, include all files except for exclusions. So we're not going to exclude anything. We're just going to monitor all files in that folder. And I'm going to actually check all the boxes here. I want to monitor additions, deletions, checksum changes, file size changes, detect alternate data streams, and include the file entropy. So we're going to leave the alert level as a warning. I'm going to skip this. We don't really need that. You'll notice here, if you go back, that the log to database is now available. It wasn't available before because no database was selected, but I've done that now. So if we go back just to confirm this, okay, yeah, so this is set correctly. And we're going to leave the default options here in place. Real-time monitoring, rescan every 60 minutes. I'm going to reduce this to 10 minutes since it's a very small folder. We're going to ignore checksums. We're going to adjust this a little bit higher to 50 megabytes. And we're going to leave the rest as is. And now just hit the save and deploy button. We're going to minimize this. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to verify that this is working. A couple things, a couple of ways we can do that. So if you go back here, actually in the event viewer, one of the things we can take a look at is the local agent to see if we have that 1035 event. And we do have it. And we can scroll through the list here, and we can see that the file monitoring test has actually been picked up by the agent. So that's good. Now we can go into the file status page, file checksum status page, and see if that directory shows up. So one thing we can do here is we'll restrict it to the EventSentry server. And remember, we put a file in there, and I did that on purpose because now we can actually check to see if that directory file monitoring test shows up here in our interface. And it does. So if I click that here and go to details, we have some information. So we have the file that I added. It's a zip file, so there's of course no file version. We have a file size, a checksum. We have an entropy, it's a little bit higher since it's a zip file, and of course no digital signature. Now we're not going to see any alerts yet because we just initialized that directory for the first time. But let's go ahead and move that second file. I have a very secret file here, and we're going to move that into that same folder here. So this may take a couple of seconds to initialize because it's a little bit bigger, 25 megabytes. And remember, we're doing checksum verifications as well. So if we go back here, hit refresh. All right, it's already here. This is actually an encrypted file, so you'll see that the entropy is even a little bit higher than the zip file, and of course no signature and no file versions for that file as well. But let's copy another file in there. Got some things here from the sysinternal suite. Auto runs. We'll copy that in there. just to see some differences there. And you can see that this is pretty fast. So this is done in real time. So generally speaking, you do not have to wait a long time for these changes to show up. So as soon as that file is being put in there, the OS sends a notification to EventSentry, which will immediately monitor and capture that file. We can see here, this is an interesting one. This file that was added is the actual exe, but there is a stream, NTFS stream ADS associated with that file, and you can see that because stream is set to true. So that is a common thing when you download files from the internet. So we're going to leave this as it is, and now let's take a look. So there's nothing we really need to do anymore with this package. It's all set up. So I'm going to close this all out. And now let's take a look at the application event log, and we'll see 3 alerts here. I'm going to open up the first one. So that was the very secret file. So here's the alert. So in addition to the web reports, of course, we are generating alerts with the warning severity. We selected that earlier. And we have information here, the entropy, sign, and everything that you see in the web reports. And going up, we have the auto runs file here as well. And of course, the auto runs with the ADS alternate data stream. So how can we leverage that? So how can we, for example, send out an alert when this happens? So this is going to overlap a little bit with our other videos on event log monitoring, but I want to give you a little bit of an example here and show this in action. So if you go back to file monitoring test here, there's a couple of ways we can do that. Number one would be the alerts button. So this is usually a fairly easy way to set up something. So if I go in here, and again, I can call this, let's say, custom alerts. I could also call it file monitoring, of course. I'm going to pick the desktop action. The filter name is going to be file monitoring alerts. So we'll just leave that for now. So what that did is it actually selected, created a new package. It's global by default. You can customize that, of course. And then we have a filter here that looks at any alert that's being generated by the file monitoring feature. So this is very generic. This will apply to anything. So any file monitoring activity is now going to be sent to the desktop action. But we can customize that, and we want to customize that, of course. The first way we can customize it is we can say we only want to get alerts from this specific package that we created. So going back here, if we look at the alert, we'll notice that the first field here is called package file monitoring test. So I'm going to copy that text here, go back here to file monitoring alerts. I'm going to create a content filter. I'm going to make the content filter based on the insertion string, hit the preview checkbox here. And of course, we don't have an event ID specified here, so that makes this a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to copy the event ID 12202. So that's going to make it a little bit easier to see the definition of this file. So we can see here that package is insertion string number 5. So back to the content filter, insertion string match 5 matches file monitoring test. So with this change here, what I've done now is that this filter is now only going to look at changes that are from this package, file monitoring test, and when a file is being added. Of course, we could remove that and change it or add additional IDs, so that those are all options. So how does this work? So let's see this in action. I'm going to go back to home. I'm going to deploy this. Let's take a look and wait for the EventSentry agent to pick up this change. And here we are. And I'm going to copy another file in there. This time I'm going to copy a help file in there. And you can see this is how fast it gets detected. So the notification already came in. Again, with the zone identifier. So there are actually 2 notifications, but they're kind of overlapping. So we can't see them. So this is really just to illustrate, that this filter works. And this seems also like a good time to illustrate some of the more advanced filtering capabilities. So what we can also do is in the filters, we can look at an insertion string that's a number and do a numerical comparison. So let's just say, for example, we wanted to only get an alert if we're adding a file that has an entropy that's higher than a certain number. So if we refresh this, we're going to have two alerts in here again. We have the CHM file and the identifier file. Okay. Now let's just say we want to only get notifications of files that have an entropy higher than 7. So what I can do here is go back to our content filters, go back to insertion string match. We're going to need the preview feature, and we can see the entropy is insertion string number 7, right? So we're going to pick 7, and we're going to say more than, and we're going to say if it's more than 7. So by specifying more than, EventSentry will automatically convert that string of the entropy into an actual number and do a numerical comparison. And here we have to say changes to AND, because we don't want to do an OR match. We want to make sure this filter only matches if the package is file monitoring test and if the entropy is higher than 7. So back to home and deploy. We're going to go back to the application event log, wait a few seconds for the EventSentry agent to log that 1035 event, and there it is. And now I'm going to pick yet another file. How about desktop S64? I'm going to copy it in here. I did not get a notification, so let's take a look at the entropy. So here we can see why we did not get a notification, because both of these files that we added, the desktop, the exe, and the ADS stream, have a entropy that's below 7, unlike some of the other files. So now if I go back here and I'll pick another one of those CSM files which seem to have a higher entropy and copy that in there, then here we go. Entropy is 7.16. So in this case, of course, we did get a notification. So that is so that kind of shows you what you can do with these alerts. So now, of course, you can customize this further. For these alerts, you could also trigger a script. You could send an email, of course. You can make this very specific to files being changed, removed, and whatnot. And you can do enhanced matching based on the contents. For example, let's take another look at this latest alert here. We could look at the file version, for example. You could get an alert if the file is not signed. You could get an alert if the size is larger than a certain size and the entropy and it's not signed. So there's a lot of things you can do with the event log filters. And that's also the main reason why we don't have alerts that are being sent out directly from file monitoring, so that you have that flexibility here and utilize all of these enhanced features that are available to the event log filters.